All right, pleased to be joined by former UCF running back coach Ryan Held, who's been kind enough to take some time out of his busy day as he's got a pretty important job now, which we'll get to in a little bit. But, Coach, first off, thanks so much for hopping in on the Sons of UCF podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you having me. Excited to reminisce a little bit because that was a time that I cherished a lot. My wife cherished a lot, and we had an incredible time when we were at UCF.
Well, let's talk about that. So, obviously, end of 2015 is coming around, and late December, Scott Frost gets the job, obviously at UCF. How do you get involved from there? How do you get made aware of a job on staff? How do you get aware of UCF? Kind of take me through sort of how that transition takes place for you.
Well, I was the JUCO head coach at the time. I was the head coach at NEO A&M College. I actually was out recruiting when he officially offered me the job, but he had hit me up and, gave me some intel a little bit. Hey man, I might have this opportunity. And I'll never forget, he's like, you want UCF? And I won't name the other two schools that he potentially was in on. I said, Coach Frost, you got to go to UCF. That place is unbelievable. And so long story short, I was at a high school in Oklahoma and he called me up and said, do you want to come down to UCF? And I was already running to Orlando, Florida when he said that. So, it happened very quickly. Obviously we took over a team that, hadn't done well in 15, but there was enough talent on that team. And obviously being in the state of Florida and a tremendous university and history to get there and get that thing turned around quickly.
Did you have a previous relationship with Coach Frost? Did you guys work together in a previous stop that he kind of knew to kind of tap you quickly after he got announced at UCF?
We played together at Nebraska. We were the same
Okay.
age. So a guy he played football with in high school at Wood River High School was my roommate. But, he went to Stanford out of high school and then transferred to Nebraska and redshirted. Back then you couldn't be eligible. You had to sit out when you transferred D1 back in the 90s. And so we just, befriended then. And then, he did his thing in the NFL and then kind of worked his way up through college. When he was at Oregon, he recruited some of my guys over the years when I was a JUCO head coach, and we kind of stayed in touch. And he wanted to give me an opportunity. I'm forever in debt to him to give me that opportunity to be a Division I coach, and then the rest was history.
Had you, obviously, it sounds like you gave him some advice that UCF was a good spot. Had you ever been to UCF? Have you ever been on campus or been around the school prior to that phone call?
I had not, I'd been to Disney World, growing up a little bit, and like everybody, but UCF. When we were at Nebraska, we played UCF. I think it was 97 or one of those years. And they came up with Dante Culpepper, I believe.
Yeah. Yep.
And came up, and it was a heck of a game. And you just kind of keep. I remember, them beating Baylor, I think, in whatever the Fiesta Bowl was, and so you knew that UCF was a sleeping giant, and you knew that what Dr. Hitt had done and making that place, an incredible for students, and really working the football piece of it and athletics, and you just knew that thing, was going to take off, and already had taken off. But the future was bright, and I mean, you just couldn't turn that opportunity down.
You mentioned, so you walk on campus for the first time. You're inheriting a team that did not win a game the previous season. Obviously, I'm sure morale was down a little bit, but there was some talent on that roster. You and the staff are coming in brand new. What's the first thing you all did? That seems like such a daunting task. New roster, new team, new school, new place, rough year. As a coach, what was your first one or two strategies that you wanted to do as you walked on campus?
Well, I can tell you, I can remember it like it was yesterday when, you get your flight, you get your rental car, and you're at MCO, and I remember just driving along and driving in, and I was just like, oh my God, this place is unbelievable. Just driving and seeing the buildings, how aesthetically incredible it was, and the little down the where the arena is, and the different shops and different stuff, and then you went to the bounce house, and you're just like, man, I mean, this is unbelievable. Sean Beckton, who Hall of Famer, Coach Frost kept. Travis Fisher, great player at UCF, kept. And so I'll never forget. I parked in that front spot where the I can't remember, is it Dench or something?
Wayne Dench, yeah, the Wayne Dench Center, yep.
So I walked in, and there was Coach Frost, and I met Coach Beck and Fish, and they're already rolling and getting recruiting going. Adrian Killins, I think maybe it was my first guy that I met. Obviously great player for UCF, and you just knew that that we're going to get some great players in the recruiting class. And it kind of was I was one of the first coaches there, and then I know you talked to Mario before. Good old Mario as heck. That's my guy, Italian stallion. But then Shenander got hired, and Greg Austin got hired, and Rude got hired, and different coaches got hired, and then it was organized chaos. Like anytime you take over a program, and Ryan Callahan was there as a recruiting guy. So he kind of had some names and everything. We just went to work. What did we need? Obviously Beck and Fish were big because they knew the roster, more than we did. And we just, what did we need here? Transfers here, and just started going around Florida. I was the JUCO guy, so I got on a plane and started going around. And but I can tell you, sitting down and signing that contract was literally professionally the happiest day of my life. No question about it. Because, here's the guy. Here I am. I'm a D2 guy. I've been a JUCO guy. This is my first Division I opportunity to come to Orlando, Florida. I mean, are you kidding me? So this was a tremendous opportunity. And obviously, we can talk about a lot of things, but my wife and I, that was the happiest we've been, no questions asked.
Well, take me inside your first kind of meetings with the team. Again, what was the morale like for the team? And kind of as a coach, what did you want to kind of instill with them from that first conversation about what the new regime was going to be like, what the new standard was going to be like with you and the rest of the staff?
Well, we just had to go in and start. We didn't recruit these guys, so we had to go in there. I think that anytime you're new, you just got to go and get to know them and lay out a vision of what we want to get done. Obviously, Coach Frost, tremendous offensive mind. We knew we could get great players there. We wanted to play fast. I think we had some different, sayings: UCF fast, UCF fierce. So we kind of started getting our brand going, and we were Nike. Coach Frost knew Phil Knight, and so I think they were working to get some more uniform combination. All that kind of stuff. But, we knew there were players there. Beck told us there were players there, and we just had to kind of reset it a little bit and get these guys refocused and get in the weight room. Coach DeBall, our strength coach, got his staff, and those guys started getting in the weight room, and then we just started recruiting and then building the relationships and starting installing what we wanted to get done. And when you go in the room, you knew there were players there, but we needed more, and we went out and had a really good first recruiting class. Obviously you get a guy like McKenzie Milton and Adrian Killins, go right down the line of guys that we got, to add to what was already there. I mean, you had Traquan Smith, you had the Griffin brothers, you had Pitt, you had all those guys, Miller, and we just needed to go get some more guys, and we did, obviously, and really set that place up for a nice run, and it continues to be going anyway.
How would you describe the 2015 offense under George O'Leary? I mean, it was very pro style, heavy running attack. There wasn't a lot of flash and dash, if you will, to the George O'Leary style offense. Mm-hmm. Complete opposite from what obviously Coach Frost ended up installing. How difficult was that transition? Kind of taking guys who are used to playing under one system, probably were recruited because they fit one system. Mm-hmm. Now you all come in, have a different philosophy, different mindset, different tempo. How difficult was that shift from sort of old offense to what it is that you all want to run?
Well, it took a little time, right? The way we practiced was totally different. The way everything we did, and so it was just the training piece of it started in the weight room and the conditioning, and then when we got on that practice field, we practiced in the mornings, so we got out there and got after it, and those guys just had to learn the tempo piece of it, how to line up fast, really put people on their heels. It was a different philosophy defensively. I believe they were an even front team before we got there. And brought in an odd front, so those guys had to have what do you call it? Different techniques up front and different things. So everything was new. And the defense had to learn to line up against tempo. The offense, we had to learn to line up fast and, different techniques and fundamentals and how we did things. And so it just took a little time, in year one, when you look at it, I think we finished 6-7, very easily could have won the league year one. We lost to doggone Temple, let them drive down. We didn't get a first down, and then they drove down and scored with 1 second left. And then we go to Houston and had that game, in really good hands and kind of sputtered a little bit, turned it over. Then they scored. And I can't remember, we had another Maryland game. We should have beat Maryland, Yep. So we could have easily finished 9 wins that first year. We were very competitive. Even Michigan whooped us, but we went up there and ran for almost 300 yards against them, So, we were able to get a lot in. We didn't play well in the Cure Bowl at all.
Yes.
They whooped us pretty good that day. We just, we were not good that day. But we were motivated after that, and then that led us into the offseason year two. And then obviously an incredible run in the 17 season that we went undefeated.
You mentioned this player earlier, but I believe the first official recruit under the Coach Frost regime, obviously when you were there, was Adrian Killins,
Correct.
Who obviously was a way different style back than UCF had ever had. 5'8", 160 is what he was listed at back then. When you saw him initially on his tape, were you like, I've got it? What stood out to you about AK the moment you saw him?
Well, that's what speed do. He's unbelievable. He's cheese and bread, baby. He gets the ball and he can go all the way. He just had to learn, the different nuances of the offense. Obviously the running piece of it, he wasn't the biggest guy. He had to find the little nooks and, within the offensive line when we didn't run him up the middle too much, but, we got him on the edge. He's able to catch the ball. Obviously he had a huge return against East Carolina. Maybe he had a touchdown. All the way. So he just had to learn how to pass block a little bit and do all kind of different things. So he really was a guy that was a catalyst and a home run hitter for us. And as we built, the offense, Jordan Akins was a guy that was kind of a bigger receiver. We moved him to tight end. He was obviously a freak. He was, I think, maybe injured in 15. I can't remember. But we were able, Coach Beck is an incredible coach. And, year one, he probably struggled a little bit, blocking, got better year two, but, him and Jordan Franks were as good as there was, definitely in our league at tight end. Traquan Smith got him rolling. We had Diedrich Snelson and, obviously then year two, we got Gabe Davis, and we just got a lot of weapons. And then, what was the quarterback's name? Was it Holman? I can't remember.
Justin Holman. Yep.
He started it, and then I think maybe toward the end, McKenzie kind of took it over, and had some good moments. And as a freshman, and then obviously year two, he was ridiculous. But we just had to get to know these guys and get everything installed. But gosh, man, that was fun. Like I said, you're going to hear me say it a lot. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'll look over at my wife sometimes and we'll be like, yeah, I know.
Well, Coach, you mentioned the Michigan game. Obviously, to your point, on the field, I think it was 34-7 at halftime, whatever. So they whipped us good. But there was that one play. AK takes a sweep, 87 yards of the house. I think all of us who watched that game knew we were rebuilding, and our jaws hit the ground and said, oh my God, did you just see what that kid did? Was that just his natural instinct, his natural ability to kind of turn that corner and turn the Jets on? That's probably the highlight of that game from a UCF fan perspective. And that's even when I knew, okay, we're going to get whooped pretty good today, but man, there's something here. Yeah,
that was actually one of our wrong way run plays. So the quarterback reads the end. If the end sits, you give it to the running back, which obviously was AK. If the guy would get up the field and take the running back, then the quarterback would run the ball. We ended up, I think we motioned the guy in, we cracked, and then AK got around the corner and the guy took, I think he was shocked, right? Michigan's a great program. They got great players, but, AK really turned it on and he took that one little bad angle and then she was over. And I can remember being on the sideline, him getting around the corner. I'm like, okay, we got one here. And you just knew that there was going to be some big things from that point on in his career that he was going to be able to do. And obviously he did it.
You had a bit of a 1-2 punch that year. You obviously used AK kind of as a speed back, but you used Dontravius Wilson a lot too. He was obviously a bigger back, 5'10", 210,
Yep.
kind of a bigger back. How did you kind of balance those two guys out? Obviously, two different skill sets, but how did you kind of balance Dontravius and AK's running style?
Yeah, that was a nice 1-2 punch. Going into the game, we had certain things that we really wanted to focus to get AK the ball. We were able to. They both can do everything that we wanted to do, but if I heard a play call that was coming or going to be down the line, I made sure I got the right back in. But Don was good. Don. I mean, was it Don? Right? Yeah.
Yeah, Dontravius. Yep.
He really had a good feel. He had good vision. Could catch the ball, and he could run. He had some good runs. Against. In our league, and I can't remember off the top of my head some of the games, but what did he rush for? About 800-900 yards, I think, maybe close to it. I can't remember, but
yeah, you had three backs that year go over 300 yards. You had Juwon Hamilton 495, you had Dontravius 400, and then you had AK with 325.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so we had a nice, really three guys. Juwon was a freshman, AK was a freshman. And so we had a good thing going there. But yeah, I mean, we were able to get all three of those guys reps, and that was fun because you really had three really good players there.
You mentioned a young McKenzie Milton. I think his first couple of games, Coach, were a little rough. I think he had a 6 turnover or a 6 fumble performance in one game, but then the next game he'd come out, he'd be so electric. When you saw McKenzie, and obviously you saw more than we did on practice fields and on film and whatnot, when did you realize, okay, hey, we got something special here? I mean, it wasn't very obvious early on to fans, but when did you kind of know as a coach, hey, this kid's got something about him?
Well, he just has such a quick release and had a feel for things. He knew how to anticipate throws, and he never got shook. All right. And so here's a story, and people maybe won't appreciate it, but this doesn't make him a great player, obviously. But I'm like, this guy's, it was one of the greatest things I've ever seen, but you're not going to think it was. So we would always in fall camp have guys come up and either tell a joke, sing a song, or just do something. So I can't make it. So see this bottle right here. So there was a Gatorade bottle that was sitting on like where the coach would talk, like the mantle thing or whatever. So he literally had a book bag. All right. McKenzie Milton went up. Okay. McKenzie Milton, Hawaii, I'm quarterback, blah, 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 blah. And he came and the bottle was on the thing. He took it and he flipped it up in the air and turned and walked away. And the thing didn't say a word, and it stuck right on the ground and on the deal. And the place went bananas. All right. Crazy. And I was like, this guy's the coolest guy I've ever seen. And that's what he was, man. He was this Hawaii hang loose. And then, yeah, he had some rough deal. He was a freshman, but he just went back out there and never got shook and just kept grinding. And then obviously in 17, he was, you could argue, as good as there was in the nation.
What goes into that decision? So you mentioned you had Justin Holman, who was a veteran quarterback. You guys also had Nick Patty on that roster, who, again, another veteran quarterback. But sort of 3-4 games in, Coach Frost just made the decision, hey, it's McKenzie's ball. What goes into a decision like that to give a true freshman the ball when you have some guys in Holman and Patty who had experience? That takes some guts as a coaching staff to say, we're going to give it to the true freshman. What led into that decision, and how did you all know that, hey, this is the right thing for us to do?
Well, I mean, those decisions aren't easy, right? Because you have older guys, they've been in the program, and, they meant a lot to the program. We're year one and taking over a 12 team. And, at that point, we were looking to build the program how we wanted to get it done. And, when you look at it, I don't remember what game it was. We just felt that McKenzie moving forward just gave us, the best chance for now and into the future for what we're trying to do offensively, because it was different offensively. Not that the other guys couldn't run our offense. We just felt McKenzie at the time gave us at that moment and moving forward in the future the best chance to win. And, those decisions aren't easy. But we just felt we needed to make it. Obviously Coach Frost was the boss and Mario was the quarterback's coach, and we made the decision, and the rest was history.
I think you mentioned this earlier. One thing about that season people forget, you talk about the 6-7, but going to the last 3 games of the year, you guys are 6-4, right? You're right there, to your point, a couple of tough losses. Then we go to Tulsa, or we have Tulsa at home, lose to them. We go to play the Cows in South Florida. They beat us up pretty badly. And then you mentioned the Cure Bowl where things kind of fall apart. What kind of happened in that last part of the season? Was just growing pains, hitting the wall? Like how do you kind of think about those last 3 games and sort of what happened and sort of how things went awry for UCF?
Yeah, Tulsa, we were expected to play better against Tulsa. They came in and got after us pretty good. They punched us in the mouth, offensively. They had some good players, and they hit us on a couple runs, and, we missed a few plays. And so that was just one of those choppy games to where I don't want to say we went in overconfident, because we didn't. We just didn't play well. And then, so you don't get that one done. And then, you go to, South Florida had it rolling. Quentin Flowers was great. Marlon Mack. They had Scantling, I think, a receiver. They had some really good players. And we went and we lost. I think we lost Miller the first drive of the game, our right tackle. That what it was?
Wyatt Miller?
Yeah, Wyatt Miller. I think he got rolled up on, and that didn't help us. Crazy enough in that game, even though, we weren't happy with it, they scored that last.
I was gonna ask that. Yeah, they scored kind of a garbage time TD there.
We're not happy with that one. But listen, it was what it was. Rivalry games, you got to play all 60 minutes. But we actually got that onside kick, if you remember, but we stepped out of bounds by like this much, and that would have changed the whole deal there, I believe, if I remember correctly. But they were good, man. They were good. And then I think it was, with the Cure Bowl, obviously it's a tremendous bowl. My mom's actually a breast cancer survivor. Okay. When you're for our kids, they lived in Orlando. The bowl was in Orlando. Arkansas State, they had good players. They had like 7 senior D linemen that year. And they played really, really well that night. And I think our guys, we came out. I think if you remember correctly, the opening kickoff, we had 2 guys with the same number. And then we had to get the ball at the 10-yard line. And then we ended up having obviously a punt. And then we just, it was just bad. We got booed that game. I'll never forget. My parents were there like, Ryan, they're booing you. I'm like, man. But we didn't play well, and I get it. Fans had a high expectation, and the last 3 games we didn't play well. But I'll tell you, it was motivating going in the off season. We knew we could go get some more great players, which we did. We got Mike Hughes, we got Otis Anderson, and Gabe Davis, and all the other guys, and then that catapulted us in the 17.
Yeah, we've talked to McKenzie, we've talked to Coach Verdue, and both told us after that game, McKenzie got booed off the field in that game, and
that's right.
And I know he was personally hurt by that. He even thought about maybe not coming back, and there was some thought of will he come back to UCF. But you mentioned kind of the recruiting piece. I did want to touch on one other player, the late great Otis Anderson. Obviously, AK had a great freshman year, and yet you see this electric kid out of Jacksonville in Otis Anderson. What kind of drew you to him? What made him such a natural fit to come play for you all at UCF?
Well, he was had such a great feel for running the ball. Tremendous ball catcher, could run routes. We could put him, at running back. We could put him at receiver. He would block. He was a dog. He really was. I loved coaching Otis Anderson. I'm still sick to this day in that situation. And he just came in and wasn't afraid, and went out there and was such a we lost Juwon Hamilton, I believe, against Maryland.
Yep.
But we still had AK, and we still had Otis. And I told Coach Frost, because we love Juwon, I said, Coach, we're still going to be fine. Those 2, I'll get Otis, get him going. And we ended up, you could argue that 1-2 punch was as good as there was in the nation. And it just was fun to watch those guys. You can just go to some of the games, right? Even the Maryland game, Otis had that one run on the pin pull. The Memphis games, he played tremendous in that. And then I'll never forget, we should have hit him against Auburn. We went empty, and looked tempoed, and we looked over, and they went cover 2, and he was the outside guy. We call it cat rim, where he acts like he's going to run a hitch and goes right down the middle of the field. They went cover 2, and the inside guy runs a corner, so the safety took the corner out. I think it was Jordan Akins, because we were in our rudder ladder package, and Otis went boom, and McKenzie just missed right down the middle, because we were our like touchdown, and we just missed him. But yeah, Otis gave us an incredible weapon, and again, he wasn't afraid. He was not afraid as a freshman, and that's what those Florida guys. We loved recruiting those Florida guys, because they play all year round and they love to compete. And our practices were unbelievable, going against each other, because we just had so many great players.
2017, obviously, the fall camp starts, like you said, that there was a bad taste in a lot of kids' mouths, right, from how 2016 ended. You bring in some new talent. Was there a point during that fall camp when you as coaches looked around at each other and said, you know what? We may have something here. We may really have something here. I don't know if you're superstitious, if you don't want to say stuff out loud, but was there a point where you kind of saw what was going on in the field and you kind of thought to yourself, man, we got something special brewing here?
I want to bring this story up. This is the fun. If you can humor me for a second.
I'm here for you.
Split up, and not many people might not remember this. You might remember it. But that spring, okay, we did 1s versus 2s in the spring game, okay? And I was on the 2s. Frost let me have that team, me and Dawson and a couple other coaches, and we went against the 1s. I had Pete DeNovo at quarterback, Tristan Payton, and I had Pittman and whatever, and we got those guys jacked up. And if you go back, Adam, and look, we beat the number 1s in the spring game. They doused me with water. We beat them in the spring game. People don't remember that probably. The 2s beat the 1s in the spring game. I had to bring that up. But anyway, the fall camp, I'll tell you, you'll laugh at this. We had our last scrimmage before playing FIU, right? And our defense whooped the offense, whooped us. For some reason, we couldn't scrimmage in the stadium. I don't remember what it was. There was something, so we scrimmaged right on that practice field right there. And I'll never forget. I mean, we walked off the field like, golly, I don't know, because, you're a competitor, right? You go against the defense and they want to get you, you want to get them. We knew we had players. We just, they played really, really well. And we walked off, we're like, we'll be good. But then we go against FIU and we score 70 or 60 some, and then the rest was history. But I mean, there was a doubt. We knew we were going to be good. But that last scrimmage going into the season, we didn't do too well. Our defense whooped us pretty good. So we were like, man, either our defense is, really, really, really good, or we're that, you never know. But it worked itself out. But we knew we had the players. We just had to get the ball to the playmakers.
You mentioned a few games early on that season, obviously some blowouts, ECU, FIU. I think one of the first ones that kind of got to us was at Navy. Brandon Moore makes a great hit, forces a fumble, and then you all kind of have a game, a clock chewing drive at the end there. Otis ends up punching it in for a touchdown. You end up winning that game by 10. What do you remember about that drive? Again, you're leaning on a true freshman, Otis Anderson. Again, you're trying to burn the clock a little bit there. What do you remember about that last drive against Navy?
Well, the one thing about Navy, that was the wives trip. So they went on that one, which was neat. That was the best football deal just because I'm very patriotic, and, we ended up beating them, and then they sang their alma mater and we got to watch it. If you're Army, Navy, watch that game every year. That was incredible. Just the pageantry and everything of being up there at Navy. But we knew, you go against Navy, back then when they ran the triple option, you're not going to get the ball much. Either get it done or you're not going to get it done. And we knew that was a huge game in the league. We needed to win on the road against a really good program. And that really, I think, brought us closer together. And that was big for us down the stretch.
The middle part of that season, I think a lot of people also forget, it was, and I'm sure you remember this, it was Baby Watch, right? Coach Frost was on Baby Watch. I think his first child was on the way. There were planes at tarmacs and whatnot. Like, what did that do for you all as a coaching staff, kind of knowing that he may have to step out? How'd that kind of change how you and the rest of the staff prepared?
Well, yeah, especially when we went to that SMU
game,
it was really close. We didn't know if he was going to be able to coach in that game or not, which that was a huge game for us, getting that one done. that was a fun-ish stressful time for Coach, when your first son's going to be born. And we just knew we had to just pick up the slack. Everybody was prepared for their roles if he did have to go. And we were ready. Things were, year one might have been a little more difficult, but year two, we had it, the systems and processes in place. And so we were prepared. And then obviously RJ was born, and that was a big deal for Coach. And we were able to keep it rolling.
I don't know how much longer I have left in this earth, Coach. Hopefully another 40, 50 years. But I think it'll be hard pressed for me to find something as exciting. And those back-to-back games you all played in 2017.
Oh.
First, the game at home against the Cows, and then the championship game again at home against Memphis. Let's start with the game against the Cows. Again, it's Black Friday, rivalry game, sold out, bounce house, right? Everyone's kind of jumping and cheering. First off, have you ever been a part of a game like that? The twists, the turns, the back, the forth. I mean, just the entire thing. I don't know how you all survived it as coaches on the sidelines with that kind of emotion and that kind of adrenaline. But have you ever been a part of a game that crazy as you saw that day against when UCF played the Cows?
No, I haven't. And even when you add Memphis in the next week, you add that 8 days. I've never been associated with anything like that. That was insanity in a good way. You go back, and I'll still every once in a while pull up the kickoff return, Mike Hughes, just to hear and see it. But I remember when they kicked it to him, I was shocked that they did. And then when he broke through, and I've been in some loud stadiums now in my life, okay? That was no doubt the loudest I've ever heard anything in my life at that moment. It was like a Kiss concert on steroids. And people were just fired up, obviously. And I mean, we all, even as coaches, we were just looking at each other like, we'll remember this till we take our last breath. That's how awesome that moment was.
So many great plays from that game, Coach. I think my favorite play was, in my view, the perfect play call. It's the 23-yard screen pass that KZ has to Otis to put you guys up 42 to 34. It was a perfect call against where the defense was going at that point. And that was my favorite play from the game. Do you have a favorite play from that game outside of the Mike Hughes?
They went man, and he just snuck through there, and we were able to get it to him. One of the things lost in that game was this. They had two linebackers that were their first and second all-time leading maybe tacklers in USF history. They were out of the game. They ran a totally different defense against us. They put in like nickel dime, and it seemed like there were 100 DBs out there. We took their two middle linebackers out of the game because they couldn't handle Otis and AK speed-wise. And so we struggled a little bit for a while, right? They were stopping us doing some different front stuff and putting us in some different situations. But, we ended up going back to some basic stuff. We hit Jordan Akins down the field. We hit Traquan, obviously the screenplay. And some of our, crazy enough, Adam, install A from the first moment we got to UCF ended up going back to those plays, and those were the plays that ended up winning us the game offensively in that game.
I don't know if this is true or not. McKenzie told us on an interview a few years ago that in that 2017 season, you all never ran the same play twice out of the same formation. Do you have any?
I would say that's very accurate.
How does that happen? I mean, that seems like such a tough thing to do. How does that happen? How does that kind of work out that way?
Well, the thing about it is within the concepts that we had, we can just smoke, and we can smoke and mirror it, run the same type of play or the same, but just do it out of a different formation. It was a lot of NFL stuff from that piece of it. So we were really hard to defend because you couldn't just say, oh, they're going to run this based on how they're lining up, because our guys were smart enough to be able to tweak this and tweak that and really put these guys in bad positions. But it was easy to us because our guys knew what to do.
Well, if your blood pressure hadn't dropped from that game, here comes Memphis a week later. Championship game again at home in the bounce house. Again, another 62-55 thriller, obviously overtime game. Biggest memory from that game? I mean, obviously the Trey Neal interception is huge, but do you have a favorite memory from that game?
Boy, I mean, that game was, again, just chaos. I thought we were in trouble when they had the ball and they were going for that field goal. And I think, did they false start or they did something
Yep.
and moved them back? And then they missed it, we blocked it or whatever. And then, we ended up getting, and I don't remember, we went down and scored, and that was the game. I remember we got down to I think it was the 1 yard line or 2 yard line. And we ended up running the freeze play to AK, and he scored right at the goal line. I remember that was a huge play because we needed to score there, to really put us in good position. Otis had a big run on a dart play where he followed the tackle and went through and almost scored, on that play. He had an incredible game that day, Otis did. But it was just, obviously Coach Norvell's a great coach. Riley Ferguson was their quarterback. So when I was a JUCO head coach at NEO, he was at Coffeyville, and we actually scrimmaged them a couple of years before. So I knew what kind of guy Riley was. He was just a dog and could sling it all over the yard. But, to be able to win that at home, since they had those games back then, you could, those championship games, you'd have it at the home field, which was big for us. And, again, you just walk off that field in amazement, what had transpired over the last 8-9 days for South Florida in the Memphis game.
How much fatigue is there for a team at that point, right? I mean, your last game of the year, obviously you still have a bowl game coming up. It's football. You're running into each other on every play. There's always injuries, fatigue. How hard is it for a team to stay that locked in, that dialed in, down to the final second of a season like that? Like, that feels like it's uncommon, Coach, but you would probably know better than I. How hard is it to do that?
Well, that separates the great ones, right? That separates the great teams. Can you focus during those times, because the human nature naturally would tell you to relax or it'll happen. No, you have to stay dialed in, focused. You got to keep grinding because if you want to smell the roses, you got to finish the job. And these guys, they got the confidence winning some of those close games. Obviously the Navy game and the South Florida game, that was just huge, winning that. And then that allowed you to be able to win that close game against Memphis because, you had gone through, the adversity that had been in the previous, times, either, in the year. But it's not easy. And that's what separates great programs from programs that are just average or above average.
I know Shaquem comes to mind, but Coach, who are the leaders on that team? Who are the vocal guys? I mean, obviously coaches are one thing, right? But you need some strong leaders in the locker room to make sure the team stays aligned. Who are the key leaders for that 2017 team for you all?
Pitt was a leader. Griffin, Miller, obviously McKenzie was, he wasn't just a huge vocal guy, but obviously his play would make that happen. Traquan Smith was a leader. Gabe Davis, man, he killed it as a freshman that year. He wasn't, like a senior type leader, but he was out there. He would just come to work every single day and get after it. I'm trying to think of some other guys. All of our D linemen were really, really big time leaders. We just had a lot of guys that just really paid the price. Who was our kicker that year?
Matthew Wright.
Yeah, right. Matty Wright. He was a leader, as a kicker. And then our punter, who was our punter? The
big old Mac Loudermilk.
Loudermilk. He was a nut cutter. We just had so many dudes. And, depending on the situation, a different guy would step up. But these guys, they came to work. It was so much fun. I'd never had so much fun in my life coaching at UCF and specifically coaching that team.
Well, the Memphis game will be remembered for two things. Obviously, beating Memphis, win the championship. But during that game, news breaks that Coach Frost is gonna leave UCF and head to Nebraska. Obviously, those rumors have been around there for a while. How did that affect you all as coaches, as coaching staff? I know you hear the rumors. I know when talking to Coach Beck and Coach Verdue, right? I know you kind of have some insight what's happening. How did that affect you all as a coaching staff with a lot of that stuff swirling around you?
Well, it was just, it was chaotic, right? There was a lot of stress because, some of the uncertainty, okay, we're doing this, we're not doing this, we're staying, we're not staying. It was stressful for everybody, because you had such an incredible opportunity to go undefeated, and you didn't want to let any distractions affect that, because this is, you never know. To go undefeated in college football in Division I is the hardest thing to do, right? And we had that opportunity to do that. Obviously, once it broke, the UCF players, I mean, let's be honest, they were mad. They were upset. They liked us. We liked them. So there was some friction, whether we were going to coach the game or not going to coach the game, do this, do that. And so there was some sleepless nights with that. And then once the dust settled, and we had some coming to Jesus meetings with them, because they were mad. They were pissed. And listen, I don't blame them. They liked us. We liked them. They didn't want us to leave. And we ended up having some really hard meetings. And when it was all said and done, I think we just all said, all right, this is what our reality is. We have a choice. We have a chance to go undefeated. All right. We can finish the job. Let's enjoy it. Let's do it together. We've worked so hard to get to this point, or we just tank this thing. And I'm glad that the guys ended up saying, all right, let's get this deal done. We want to go undefeated. And then everybody does their own thing after that. And that's the choice that was made. And we were able to really have good practices after kind of that, a reckoning and coming to Jesus meeting that we had. And then we ended up having a great practice, and we went up and beat an SEC team and finished 13-0.
How about for you personally? I know we talked to Coach Beck, and he said that you all were trying to make a decision together as a staff, right? It was kind of a family decision, but for him specifically, right? He was a UCF guy. It was a tough call on what he wanted to do, and he agonized over it. How about for you personally? Was it for you? Hey, I'm gonna just ride with this staff because these are my brothers, and we're gonna do this. Was there ever? How did you kind of handle like what you wanted to do? Were you always gonna do whatever Coach Frost and the rest of your group do, or was there thoughts for you about, hey, yeah, kind of like it here. It's not so bad in Orlando. Maybe I stick this thing out. What was your process like?
Well, obviously, if you could turn back time, I never would have left UCF. We'd be in the Big 12 conference. I can't imagine the freaks we'd have at this point, staying and doing what we were doing. But you can't turn back time, right? My situation was, I played at Nebraska,
Sure.
So the opportunity to go back. And plus, a lot of these things, you don't have the choice. I mean, I didn't have to go, but what am I going to do? I'm out of a job, right?
Yeah.
So, it's just a tough deal. Trust me, in the room, we could stay here for a long time and win a lot of football games and have a great quality of life. Heck, the house I bought, made from scratch over in Oviedo, was $400,000. Now it's worth $700,000. I'd have that house right now, that equity built into that house. I had a Disney pass, Adam, where I could go and get a Dole Whip and go for 2 hours and go home. You know how much it costs me right now to take my 4 and 5-year-old and my wife to go to Disney just to stay on the property? I looked at it last week for 6 nights, passes, meals, $10,000. It would cost me $12,000 to go to Disney right now. That's nuts. Yeah. We live there. No state income tax, beaches, both sides. Anyway, It was hard. It was hard. I was sad because, I mean, look at what I would have had coming back at running back. I mean, I had Otis. I had AK again. We had more recruits coming in. Cordell Richard.
You had Greg McCray too, a walk-on who ends up being a fantastic running back. Yeah.
We called him Craig off Friday. He loved that. He was a walk-on and he was a dog. I mean, my room was loaded.
Yeah.
And so it was hard, Adam. I'm not going to lie to you. I still, if we could go turn back time, which you can't, we had to make the decision, or Coach Frost did, and we had to do it. But at the time we felt it was right, or he felt it was right. But I ain't gonna lie to you, it's hard because I loved it there. And that's a great place. And but you know what, in life, that's what happens. And God has a plan, and we're all in our situations. But it definitely was a memorable time that I'll never forget. And I'm going to retire, moving there, living there. I will retire in Oviedo, Orlando, and when it's time for me to hang up the cleats.
Was there ever any doubt that you all wanted to coach that Peach Bowl game?
Oh, I had no doubt myself. I can't speak for anybody else. I wanted to finish the job. I've always believed in no matter what you do, you finish the job.
What's your emotion? The game's over. You win. McKenzie's holding up that trophy, telling everyone to cancel the playoff, right? Confetti everywhere. What's the emotion? Are you sad? Are you happy? I imagine it's got to be a lot of mixture at that point, Coach.
Bittersweet.
Yeah.
Bittersweet. You're sad because you're leaving an organization and a program that's absolutely loaded. And then, okay, you're going back to your alma mater and you get to coach in the Big Ten and be 3 hours from your parents and all that kind of stuff. So it was, a lot of emotions, but I was glad we were able to win the game for those guys. And I'm glad that all those guys believed in us and, everybody put their egos aside and bitterness aside. And we just said, you know what, we've done all this. Let's set all that and let's go beat Auburn's, what? And that's what we did.
Who was the player that was toughest for you to say goodbye to?
Oh, man. Well, really my room, Adam. It was hard. Those running backs, man, we had a great relationship. I'm not going to speak for them, but I felt I had a really good relationship with them. And it was hard. I had tears in my eyes when Coach announced to the team after the Memphis game. I was sad. I was sick because, again, it was bittersweet. You're happy on one sense, but you're sick and sad on the other because you're leaving an incredible situation, not knowing the unknown. Now, again, when you go back and look, I don't have to say it, but I think everybody knows what I'm thinking.
Well, catch us up with where you are now, Coach. I know you spent some time in Nebraska, and obviously you've since left there. Where are you at now? Where are you coaching? Kind of catch us up with what's happening with you these days.
So after Nebraska, I went down to University of North Alabama. I was the offensive coordinator there, and I love Florence, Alabama. That's a great place. I got a really good opportunity there, and we ended up getting let go there. I thought I had a chance for the head job, but it didn't work out. And so then I'm looking again, and I got a chance to come back to Nebraska. I'm a Division II head coach here, University of Nebraska-Kerney. It's in the MIAA conference, the SEC of Division II. It's a big time league, really great institution here, very supportive. Year one was a struggle to a certain degree just because it was new schemes. A lot of guys had left. We had new players come in, was the old and the new, blending all that. And we had good moments. We had bad moments. Now we're going into year two. I feel really good about it, Adam. I think we're going to be a lot better, but I've used a lot of stuff that I learned from Coach Frost and what we did at UCF. I have some of those concepts that we'll use here at Nebraska-Kerney. And I have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, that two sons, and that my wife and I have had. It started in Orlando with some fertility stuff down there that we had to do, and so life is good. Knock on wood, life is good. I want to help kids become their best version on and off the field. That's my why. I get to do it daily, but I definitely will always remember my time at UCF. And all the people down there, and I wish the program nothing but the best.
All right, Coach, my last question for you. I'm always curious about this. Yeah, obviously you spent 2 years at UCF. What do you do with all the gear you got there? The shirts, the hat? Do you keep all that stuff? The jacket? Do you still have like a UCF bag in your closet with all that stuff?
I did give some of the stuff to our neighbors there because there were some really adamant fans, that loved UCF. But I kept some of it. I did. We moved, a few times. And so, you open up a bin. What's in this bin? Oh, there's my UCF, my playbooks, my hat, shoes, different, Nike gear, UCF stuff. And I'm going to keep that forever because I'll never forget it.
Well, actually, I lied. One last question. That first couple of years when you guys are at Nebraska, what was the rule about checking out UCF games? Were you trying to sneak and see what was going on? Were you trying to act like you didn't care? What was the rule about watching UCF stuff?
Well, we knew they were going to be good. Coach Heupel walked into a pretty good situation, and good for him. And yeah, I mean, I would look, and I'd be like, and if there was an opportunity to watch a game, I'd watch them. They obviously, really did a nice job, and I was happy for those guys. I wanted them to have success. I was a fan. You couldn't talk to them because the people thought you'd be recruiting them. But from afar, I was definitely cheering them on and wanting those guys to have success. And I think the next year they finished 12-1, and I wanted to go undefeated. And because you just want those guys to have success and be successful in life. And which a lot of them, are either in the NFL or doing their thing.
Yeah, I think Coach Beck told us that. I think he said you guys were on an airplane the day McKenzie got hurt, and the word started traveling to the airplane, and that all of the coaches who knew, like you guys were white as a ghost just by watching and seeing that news.
We were on United Airlines, and it had we had the little TV screens, and people were walking in. I don't remember what game we had just played, and then he pulled the football, went over to the right. I'll never forget this. And then it was, like we called it 51 skip. So he pulled the ball because the end closed and went out there, and then whatever, got knifed or whatever. And I remember looking, I was like, oh my God, no, because you could, whatever. Yeah. And then obviously chaos ensued. And then, Mario would always sit in front of me. Coach Frost would sit to my left, and they started walking. I'm like, guys, this is not good. McKenzie has a horrendous injury, and then the rest is history. But that was I literally almost had to go to the bathroom and throw up. It was just terrible.
How much do you stay in touch with that staff? I know you talk to Coach Verdu a lot. How much do you stay in touch with that staff? It seemed like you all are pretty close for a period of time there. How often are you in contact with those guys?
Yeah, Beck and I will talk once a month. I know he's down in Orlando there, and what a great man and a great coach. UCF Hall of Famer. I keep up with Coach Walters. I went to the Chiefs-Bengals game when they played this year and saw him before the game. And Greg Austin's down in Jacksonville. I keep up with him. And, you keep up with guys. Some guys you do, some guys you don't. And that's just the profession. Everybody has their lives. But I want nothing but, success for all those great men, great people. And, that was a time in our life we'll always remember. We'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. That'll always have a dear, a place in my heart forever.
Well, I think I can speak on behalf of UCF fans when I tell you it's the same feeling on our side. Those were magical times that you and the staff had there at UCF, and definitely appreciate all the work that you all did to take UCF, get it to where it is now. And like you mentioned, obviously, the things that are happening here obviously are a direct reflection of a lot of the work you all put in. So on behalf of Night Nation, we thank you very much. I thank you for your time today. I know you're probably busy. You probably got recruits. Do you guys have NIL and portal in your league? Is that something you have to deal with?
Yes. NIL's not a big deal in Division II. I did have a recruit a couple days ago. He committed. We're still looking for maybe one or two more guys, but we're basically done. But every time I hear the na 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 UCF, na 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 na, that'll always be in my head. And that horse coming out, what a beautiful horse. That was just the pageantry, and I'm sure it's a lot better now. Just some of the different facility improvements they've made, and but I'll get down there again and walk around, and that won't be easy because it was just such a fun time. So,
well, we appreciate you, Coach. Best of luck this upcoming season. We'll keep an eye on you, and we'll be rooting for you guys on there. Okay.
Appreciate it, Adam. Have a good one, buddy.
Thanks. Coach.